There we go. Bury me in a nameless grave. I came from God, the world to save. I brought them wisdom from above, worship and liberty and love. They slew me, for I did disparage therefore religion, law, and marriage. So be my grave without a name, that earth may swallow up my shame. Okay, on the breast there of the Prince of Wands, you see the mark of the beast itself. I think that's how Crowley actually pictured his spiritual self, riding that chariot drawn by Leo there. Anyway, today is Aleister Crowley's birthday, celebrated all over the cosmos and through many dimensions as Crowleymas. And in the old days, we sang obscene parodies of Christmas carols. Anyway, this is Crowley's birthday, and we have to do a little something. I'm going to start. I'm going to finish up with a few frequently asked questions about Aleister Crowley, because not everybody that's watching this is familiar with Crowley, and some of you are somewhat familiar with Crowley and have heard horrible things about the great beast and all the naughtiness that he's associated with. But before we become an apologist for Crowley, let's hear what Crowley thinks about his own self and his own personality in his comments on this card. Now, this is the card that represents the time period of his ascendant. He had Leo rising, and that's what he identified with. And your rising sign, of course, truly is your face to the world and your personality and such. So when turning to the tarot to get a character analysis of yourself, you'd use your birthday card, but also you'd use your ascendant, where what was rising at the time of your birth. And you might want to consider using that as your significator in tarot readings. But first of all, here's what Crowley says. Now think of this as Crowley talking about himself in describing the Prince of Wands. The Prince of Wands represents the airy part of fire, with its faculty of expanding and volatilizing. He rules from the 21st degree of Cancer to the 20th degree of Leo. He is a warrior in complete armor of scale mail. I guess Frida Harris was not completely following his suggestion there, because that doesn't look like a full set of armor. But his arms are bare, in account of his vigor and activity. He wears a rayed crown surmounted by a lion's head, winged, and from this crown depends a curtain of flame. On his breast is the sigil of To Mega Theria. Now that's Crowley's motto as a magus, number 2 on the Tree of Life. Remember, he's dictating these descriptions rather late in his life, in the 40s, probably. Okay, on his breast, the sigil of Tomegatheria. In his left hand, he bears the Phoenix wand of the second adept in the ritual 5=6 of RR at AC. The wand of power and energy. While with his other arm, he reins the lion which draws his chariot. The chariot, which is fortified by a wheel, rotating flame. He rides upon a sea of flames, both waved and salient. The moral qualities appropriate to this figure are swiftness and strength, but he's sometimes inclined to act on impulse, sometimes easily led by external influences, sometimes, especially in trifles, a prey to indecision. He's often violent, especially in the expression of an opinion, but he does not necessarily hold the opinion about which he is so emphatic. That's something to remember when being puzzled by inconsistencies in Crowley's writings, which are often contradictory. He states a vigorous proposition for the sake of stating it. He is, in fact, very slow to make up his mind thoroughly on any subject, but always sees both sides of every question. He is essentially just, but always feels that justice is not to be attained in the intellectual world. His character is intensely noble and generous. Of course it is. Intensely noble and generous. You know, and I don't doubt that. He may be an extravagant boaster, while slyly laughing both at the object of his boast and at himself for making it. He's romantic, especially in matters of history and tradition, to the point of folly, and may engineer stunts or play elaborate practical jokes. It brings to mind him going out to Liberty Island for a press conference whereby he gathered up sex workers, I guess, sex workers of various races to represent all of the races of humanity. And at his press conference, he publicly burned his Irish passport in a stunt that sort of combined the proclamation of the new Aeon and his attempt to bring the United States into World War I on England's side. That was an elaborate play and a practical joke. He might select some inoffensive nobody and pursue him for years with every weapon of ridicule, as Swift tormented the unhappy Partridge, all without the least animus, ready to give the shirt off his back should his victim be in need. His sense of humor is omnivorous, and may make him a mystery figure, dreaded without reason by people who actually know nothing about him but his name, as a symbol of terror. I've been watching Pennyworth. I'm hooked on Pennyworth, the HBO Max series. And Aleister Crowley is in it. Not the historic Aleister Crowley, but a character that's Aleister Crowley-esque and is called Aleister Crowley. And he is a bad Satanist, okay? But charming. Okay. This is due to the influence of the last decan of Cancer upon this card. One of his greatest faults is pride, meanness, and pettiness. Of any kind he holds in infinite scorn. Of any kind he holds in infinite scorn. And this is why he's so small. Regardie said how curiously small and vindictive Crowley could be. His courage is fanatically strong and his endurance indefatigable. He's always fighting against odds and always wins in the long run, the very long run. This is principally due to his enormous capacity for work which he exercises for his own sake, without lust of result. Perhaps his haughty contempt for the world at large, which however coexists with a profound ecstatic respect for every man and every woman as a star, is responsible for this. When this card is badly dignified, the character degenerates. Each of the qualities mentioned above is found in its antithesis. There's a great cruelty in him, partly sadistic, partly due to callousness arising from indifference, and, in a sense, laziness. So too he may be intolerant, prejudiced, and idle, principally because it saves trouble. He may furthermore be an empty boaster and a great coward. This is quite a confession too, I would say. In the Yi Ching, the airy part of fire is represented by the 42nd hexagram Yi, which signifies addition and increase. Full of virtue and confident therein, he contemplates work of a stupendous scope, often with the idea expressed in line 5. That's moving line 5 of the Yi Ching hexagram 42. With sincere heart, this is a quote from that moving line, with sincere heart seeking to benefit all below. In this he may achieve immense success, but this course is fraught with commensurate danger. Quote, we see one to whose increase none will contribute. While many will seek to assail him, he observes no regular rule in ordering of his heart. Line 6. This peril avoided, there comes, quote, parties adding to the store of its subject 10 pairs of tortoise shells whose oracles cannot be opposed. Let the king employ them in presenting his offerings to God. Other Yi Chings translate that, set your sacred tortoises loose, your oracular tortoises. Anyway, when talking about Crowley on his birthday, I thought that was appropriate because that's Crowley talking about Crowley in his own words, his own very frank and I think quite truthful analysis of his own personality. So let's see what time it is. I spent a little bit too much more time on that as I intended to, because I was going to cover the frequently asked questions about Aleister Crowley that is the chapter 0 of my book, soon to be out in a very new edition, The Magic of Aleister Crowley. And that's where that poem came from. Bury me in a nameless grave. I came from God, the world to save. I brought them wisdom from above, worship, liberty, and love. They slew me, for I did disparage, therefore religion, law, and marriage. So be my grave without a name, that earth may swallow up my shame. Well, as it turns out, Crowley is buried in a nameless grave. He was cremated and his ashes turned over to the head of the OTO, Karl Germer, who brought them to the United States and buried them under a tree on his property. And according to a story told to everybody by Grady McMurtry, when Grady visited the Germer property, Germer said he didn't know what to do with the ashes, so he buried them under that tree. And he pointed to a tree. He says, "Oh, or that one over there, or it might have been that one." And he says, and when I did change my mind about it, I dug around, and it either had disintegrated in the wooden box that I had it in, or I'm digging up under the wrong tree. Crowley is in a nameless grave. Be that as it may, I try to cover, and when I wrote this was many years ago, 30 years ago, in fact. The new edition is the 30th anniversary edition of it, which is now part of the Wiser Classics of Magic series. So I was a pretty young kid writing this at that time. I've gone to great lengths not to change a bunch of stuff, but obviously almost every sentence I would have written differently today. But I just answer frequently asked questions. Was Aleister Crowley a Satanist or a devil worshiper? Was he a black magician? Why did he call himself 666? Did he advocate or perform human sacrifice? Was he a drug addict? Was he a homosexual? Was he a traitor to England or a German spy? Is it dangerous to study Crowley? I think today, because I'm running so late on time, I'm going to just share, is it dangerous to study Aleister Crowley? Aleister Crowley was by no means perfect. He was not good with people, and often alienated those who loved him dearest. His bold exploration of human consciousness, human sexuality, drugs, always meticulously recorded and analyzed, are fascinating to study, but they're never intended to be casually emulated. I've never encountered anyone who knew him that did not disapprove of some aspect of his character or behavior. But he is dead. For us, only his works remain as a measure of the man, and they are currently more accessible to the general public than at any time during his life. His influence on the modern world of art, literature, religion, and philosophy is now widely acknowledged even by his most vehement critics. It is my hope that this little book may help bring the wonder of his genius to a new generation of seekers and to an even broader audience of students. And now this is yet again will be a new generation, but I digress. But is it dangerous for some people to study Aleister Crowley? I guess I have to say yes. For those whose belief in a God of goodness hinges upon the reality of a devil who is equally evil. For the superstitious, the ignorant, the lazy, the immature, the unbalanced, the mentally ill. Now, I would write that difference because we're all, in some form or another, mentally ill. The lazy, the immature, the unbalanced, the mentally ill, to the paranoid, the faint-hearted, for anyone who for any reason cannot or will not take responsibility for their own actions, their own lives, their own souls. For these people, Aleister Crowley is still a very dangerous man. That's where we'll close it today. Happy birthday, Uncle Al. To tell you the truth, okay, my personality is such that if I would project myself back in time and I had the opportunity to know or interact with Crowley, I probably wouldn't have gotten on with him. He would have probably turned me off. So in a way, it's a great privilege to have the opportunity to appreciate Crowley without Crowley himself getting in the way. And that's sort of what Regardi said too. He said something to the effect that at the time, even though he appreciated Crowley and Crowley's brilliance at the time, the man himself just got in the way, and it was only years and years and years later that it started to seep in, just how important this character was to the study of humans' consciousness. I guess that's what I'll have to say. Anyway, tomorrow we'll pick up something else. I wanted to finish something that I started yesterday, and let's hope I get a chance to. Until then, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.